Hello, David McMillan, back again with thoughts from my career as a smuggler for so many, sometimes successful years, but other times not. But here we are in 2020, and last time in this little series, we asked, why was the quality of people's recreational drugs so poor? So much that people were complaining, setting up viral videos about it. And interestingly, you've been wondering, well, to hell with it, I'll go and get my own. Now, where should you go and what do you need? Well, we were thinking about that, weren't we? To give this wider scope, let's take it from the point of view of two people. Let's see. Somebody who lives in the UK, where I'm speaking from now in London, and somebody from the United States. And why? Because the rules are just slightly different, and probable different outcomes too. So who have we got playing? Who wants to be a millionaire? Would-be smuggler number one will be, yes, Kevin Bloch. He lives and works in Cambridge in the UK, down at the Phillips plant there, mostly sitting at a little desk and screwing on parts or seeing that the machine screws them on. And he's got a girl in his life, Carrie Colonic, and she's the stabilizing influence. Now, does that mean that Kevin is going to tell her, darling, I'm heading off to Colombia, nothing too bad, just a kilo, and I've got a plan, or one in the making, for bringing it back to the UK because, well, we need it. Indeed. And how is Carrie going to take that news? Not terribly well. And what's his plan? Well, the outline is kind of the same. The same as who, you ask? Well, who? From America. Jed Pontiak, a guy who works out of Centerville in Ohio, at Voss Chevy, you know the place, down in Loop Road? A salesman there. Well, he'd like to be, hopes to be. He's been saying that his job was put on hold due to the great virus, of course. He was furloughed, then kind of let go, made redundant. Well, he lost it. Some issue with the boss, of course. Bosses. Anyway, he's looking for a new career as Jed. Now, he's tied up. The woman in his life is Myra Pink. She's Jed's bit of wild stuff. No, Jed isn't related to Jethro Bodine, but they have certain connections. But let's not get tangled up in characters here. We've got Kevin in the UK in Cambridge and Jed in Ohio. Both want to begin careers as smugglers. Both have planned to go to Colombia, yes, in South America, somehow manage to get, well, at least a kilo of cocaine back. And what do they need to do? They have some ideas. They have a lot of ideas about how they would hide it, in what sort of container. But as they will need to think about, since they're keeping the operation a secret, they need a cover story. Why they went missing for 2 weeks. Especially now when travel is not so easy. And I suppose in a way this is why I'm bringing this all up. Not to meet anybody's questions particularly about the smuggling methods, but this in relation to the restrictions now on our lives and how traveling is so much more exciting and challenging. Kevin in the UK was the first of our two players to accept that he would need a new passport. I don't mean a new one in his own name, but a second passport in another name. He knew that travelling around and coming back from that part of South America would mean trouble the first time he ran across a European or a British customs inspector. So, taking the advice of many, and possibly myself included, he sought to get another passport. Now, he set out to do this with the Day of the Jackal method. Now, that comes from that old book about, it was the assassination of de Gaulle, or the attempted one, in which the assassin finds somebody who died in infancy but has a birth certificate on record, takes that birth certificate and uses it to get a passport. Well, Kevin did this, and he had it sent to a friend's address. He was quite thoughtful about that, an old school friend, a school chum and his wife, so it wouldn't have a direct connection to him. He got the application form, had the photographs taken, had a counter-signature on the back of what seemed to be a doctor who was working in the area of the address that he was sending it to, and posted it off. Now, the problem was Kevin hadn't taken into account that the births, deaths and marriages records are being integrated, so that when Kevin's new passport application turned up in the name of somebody they knew to be dead, that this did not go very well. Eventually, after a couple of weeks when it didn't appear, the only people to appear were a couple of Met policemen making a routine inquiry as to who might have lived at that address. Which address? Kevin's old school friend. Well, cross out the word friend. He's just lost a couple. So he thought beyond that and found somebody who would never travel. This was somebody who was on state benefits, drifted around. Now, it's actually quite hard to find anybody, or certainly somebody of Kevin's age who's never travelled. Now, Kevin is 32 in this scenario. Oddly enough, the passport office are a little bit suspicious of anybody applying for the first time for a passport who is over the age of, I think the cut-off point is 35 now. So he just scraped in. And that passport did arrive this time, because Kevin assumed all the details of his sofa surfing old chum who would never travel. The only thing he changed was the photograph. Yes, the person who signed the back of the original photograph of the sofa surfer, Kevin's vagrant chum, was a doctor who was treating him for alcoholism, but nonetheless a doctor. So the doctor was aware of having signed it. So when Kevin substituted the photograph at the last minute in that application, the cross-check, because of the age, well, that passed. Did indeed. So he got his passport. Biometric, too. It works on images, so it doesn't mean a damn thing when getting a fake one. Not in the original application form. So, how did things go across the Atlantic? Jed Pontiak didn't think at all of using the identity of somebody who died in infancy. The thing is, the United States uses social security numbers which are issued very early in the game, pretty much at birth, or the registration of it anyway. So they continue through, and using the identities of dead people in phony passport applications is not good. But Jed knew better than that already, and found a friend who knew somebody who would never travel, a kind of Ohio woodsman, I guess, even though there weren't a lot of woods around. And sure enough, that person would never travel, and the passport arrived. But let's keep in mind what Jed's just done. Somebody now knows the guy in the middle who found the Ohio woodsman, whose identity Jed assumed. Somebody knows that Jed's up to something where he needs a false passport. So, click 1 for crossing the rule of limiting the number of people who know what you're up to. You say, well, the middleman who arranged the passport, surely he wouldn't know that Jed was going all the way to Colombia to get cocaine. I mean, he wouldn't tell him that. Surely our Jed wouldn't do that, no. Of course, he told Myra Pink, the wild woman in his life, but Myra's fine about it. Looking forward to it, in fact. No, he'd never tell any middleman this. Except when Jed received that passport in the end, the middleman was asked a question by Jed. And the question was, well, he phrased it in lots of ways and took an hour and a bit of drink to do it, but he asked the middleman, how much could I get for a kilo of cocaine? Yeah. Any clues in that? False passport, kilo of cocaine? No. That snaky middleman who took, what was it? $1,000, no, $1,200, an odd sum, for supplying the name and identity of somebody who had never travelled and would never travel. He'd never put together those two things. Or would he? But he got his passport. So both are ready to travel. Jed in the US and Kevin from England. But travel where and how? Well, leaving aside the problems of actually getting ticketing and the airlines, which are surmountable, I'll say that. If you were flying direct to Colombia, the British Commonwealth Office, Foreign and Commonwealth Office, have a few things to say about Colombia and COVID-19. Now, what do they say? Oh, yes, they have a warning for the departments of Arauca and Guavere, Department of Choco, Ariari region of South Meta. But here's the thing you really need to know. Apart from the municipality of Puerto Carreño, which had except the departmental capital, is something important. For all air travel into Colombia, a negative PCR test result issued within 96 hours, 4 or 5 days, prior to your departure will be required by the Colombian authorities. You can do something with the airline about that. Anyway, so you have to test negative there, and there could be some restriction about entering back. This changes from time to time, so I'm going to recommend in this madcap scheme that neither traveller, neither Jed nor Kevin, return directly back to their home countries from Colombia. Not a good idea. And also bear in mind that the nearest island hop from Colombia into quasi-European state, Aruba, is subject to its own rules. That's part of the Netherlands Antilles. Are you getting all this? Are you writing this down? Jed is taking it on board because he learns on the fly, but Kevin's writing this down. Perhaps you should too. And keep a red pen handy. Is it okay, or that is it legal, for Jed to travel from the United States into Colombia? Yes, as of September the 19th, it became legal to do so, and I think a resolution or an order 1198 was rescinded in Colombia with a lot of restrictions on there. Still, Jed too will need a negative COVID-19 test, no more than 96 hours old, or he will be stuck in a 14-day isolation under various conditions. But get that test, Jed. You'll need it, especially where I'm going to send you. Both Kevin and Jed are giving cover stories to relatives and friends as to their whereabouts for the next couple of weeks. Kevin in the UK is saying that he's, he was axed from Phillips as well. He blamed it on the virus because of the assembly line, and in fact that was true in the beginning. Some attempt was made to hold on to his job, but in fact he just wanted out. Oh, and by the way, he has a passport to travel on. Is he going to use it? No, he's not. He has a perfectly good fake passport, but he got a little nervous about that, so he's kind of going bareback on this one, writing it out with one passport. But call it a whim, he's going to take the other one with him anyway, even though it's in a different name. Now, my general advisory on different passports in different names. It's all right if they're the same name. You can make a story about dual nationality. But travelling with passports in different names, you travel to one place in one name, then you park that passport there. I don't know, say you go to London, Paris, you leave that passport in Paris, then you go on the second one, return back to Paris, resume on the first one. That way your initial passport doesn't have entry stamps for those, well, telltale or troublesome countries. Yes, there's still a bit of protesting going on in Bogota, and that's not the kind of thing they'll get interested in. This great shortage across the land that people were complaining about, that's what the authorities will be interested in. Anyway, Kevin's launched off on this by taking the other one, but not actually using it properly. On the other hand, Jed, he's kind of taken a hint here. He's crossed over into Mexico on his own name and then picked up on the other passport and began his travels. Like Jed, he's got spirit. Man's an idiot, but he's got spirit. As I speak, about 4 airports in Colombia are operating. That's Bogota, Cali, Rio Negro in Medellin. But none of those we're using. We're going to Cartagena on the northern coast. That resort town. Much better choice as our entry point and leaving point from sunny Colombia. I just got a postcard from our friend Jed in Mexico City. Yeah, he's under his false name, of course. You know what, though? He tells me Myra Pink is with him. I know the rule was he was going to do this single-handedly, but Myra was up for it, so she's along for the ride. Is she going all the way? We'll see. Meanwhile, Kevin is following the advice and has travelled over to Paris. But still, he's only got that one passport and the other one, what shall we say, in reserve? Or packed as a little smoking documentary bomb waiting to go off if he's searched in the wrong place. We'll see how he gets on. But I've got to tell you that the minds of both of our players have been concentrated almost entirely on their packing devices. Both have different ideas. Kevin's using the liquid container method, that is dissolving the coke in alcohol, whereas Jed's got another idea about sandwiching it in a bag. But in a sense, both are rather optimistic that their contact in Colombia, and their contact is actually in Cali, their contact will provide them with a better method than the one that they planned. Of course, here's the thing. Their contact didn't pan out. Yeah, they rang the number and it meant nothing. Did they check it much beforehand? Well, Jed made a call and somebody answered. In his limited Spanish, it seemed everything was all right, but when he got there, nobody seemed to know what he was talking about. Kevin's contact was kind of even worse. Kevin planned to meet somebody fresh. Go to a bar and start asking around? You know, some of you in your questions suggested this mightn't be madness, but a bar, sure, that would not be the place for a gringo friend to go wandering in and saying, "Anybody here sell a bit of coke when they're not busy?" It's not quite as mad as you might think, and I've kind of done similar things. Not quite in a bar, though. That's not really where you do it. When we turn to part 3 of this little series on first-time efforts of a pair of smugglers, we'll see how they got on. And I can tell you this, Jed and his girlfriend, Myra, well, she turned out to be quite an asset, because she used a kind of the more gentle women's network. And bear in mind that social gatherings, even in Colombia, are somewhat limited. People who have to be there, people who can't keep away from their night spots. Now, Myra did help, and I'll explain how she did. Kevin, on the other hand, he almost got himself into a bit of trouble, but let's kind of try and keep our friends, our little imaginary friends, out of trouble. But there's some kind of big hurdles to cross yet. The question is not really the method at the moment in Colombia, it's getting out in any sense, because the officials are there and they're rather suspicious of every traveller, and the ones leaving, well, there's not an awful lot of them, and the facilities are still operating to check, especially foreign doubles, leaving the country and what they're carrying with them. And let's think a little further down. I've always said that the key ingredient to success in any smuggling is the first thing that anybody should have. That is, where are you going to sell what you have to sell? Yep. Your outlet is more important than almost anything else. Come back if you're still with us in this imaginary voyage, and we'll see how Jed and Kevin are doing. They've arrived in Cartagena, and by different routes, and we'll say where they're going to go next and who they meet. Stay tuned for that one. Good night.